Welcome back, guys, to another video of the Sound Business Talk Show today. Today, we're talking the NFL schedule release, and we're predicting the records of each team in today's video. So, let's get right into it, guys. So first, I'm going to start with the NFC North, which is the Lions, Packers, Vikings, and Bears, which I think might be one of the tough divisions in the NFL right now, in my opinion. But let's start off with the Lions, which you know how their season went last year and ended. So yeah, I'm gonna go right into it. As Detroit, they kick off the year against Green Bay. Tough game, new system. There's a new offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. I think the Packers get that win. Actually, no. I think the Lions win this one. It's opener. I know it's tough to say because you don't know how it's gonna be, but I think the Lions got this one. And then the Lions play the Bears. I think the Lions win that one pretty easily. Then they go to play the Ravens in Baltimore. Tough game there. I think that's a loss for Detroit. Ravens in Baltimore is a tough environment. So I think that's a loss there. Then they go to play Cleveland. I think that's a win. Bengals. That'll be a tough game for them. But I don't think the Bengals defense matches up against the Lions offense. So I'm going to go with the Lions winning that one. Then you got the Lions versus the Chiefs. Week 6. That's going to be a great game right there. But I think that's a loss for Detroit. I think the Chiefs take that one. Then Detroit goes to Tampa. I think that's a win for Detroit. It's gonna be a tough game for Detroit, but I also think they're the better team. And then they go to Washington, at Washington. Tough game there. This is also a revenge game, and I don't think the Lions are gonna have any of it like they did last year. I think they're gonna win this one. Then they go to Philly. I think they beat Philly on Sunday Night Football. And then it's the Giants. I think they got that one. Then they Green Bay on Thanksgiving. I think Green Bay gets it done this time. I think they split victories. But I think this time Green Bay beats Detroit on Thanksgiving. Then we go to Dallas. I think Detroit beats Dallas. Then you got the Rams. I think the Rams are a really good team this year, so I think that's a loss for them. Then they go to Pittsburgh. I think that's a win. Then Minnesota. I think they beat Minnesota. And then Chicago is their last game, and I think they beat Chicago, depending on if it matters or not. But I think the Lions have the record of 12-5. I think they're a playoff team. Maybe I don't think they'll be the number 1 seed, or maybe not even the second. But I think the Lions are going to be in the playoffs. So we're gonna go right into the Packers, the Green Bay Packers. As I said, week 1 they play the Lions. I think Detroit loses this game. So I think the Packers I think the Packers lose this game. And the Detroit loses and Green Bay wins it. Then Green Bay plays Washington. Good game. That's going to be a great game there. Jordan Love versus Jaden Daniels. I think that's a loss for Green Bay. But yeah. And then they got Cleveland. I think that's a win for Green Bay. I don't see the Packers losing to the Browns. Then you got the Cowboys. I think that's a win for Green Bay. I don't see any way the Packers allow the Cowboys to win this game. But then you got the Bengals. I think the Bengals take this one. I think that's going to be a great game there. But I think the Bengals offense is just so good, so good. Then the Packers play the Cardinals. I think the Packers got that one. And you got Pittsburgh. I think the Packers got Pittsburgh. It'll be key to see if Aaron Rodgers joins the Steelers. Right now, I'm thinking that it doesn't. So the Steelers' record now is morally saying that Rodgers isn't going to be the starter. So, just so you know, when I do the Steelers. But I think the Packers take this one. Then they got the Panthers. I think the Panthers are going to be a little bit improved this year, but I still think the Packers beat the Panthers. Then you got the Eagles. I think that's a tough one for Green Bay. Green Bay is at home, but I think that's a loss for the Packers there. Then you got the Giants. I think they win that one. Then you got the Vikings. We don't know what we're going to get from JJ, but we do know what we're going to get from Jordan Love. So I think this year Jordan Love's going to bounce back. He had a iffy year last year, but yeah, I think they beat Minnesota. Then they play Detroit on Thanksgiving. I think Green Bay beats the Lions on Thanksgiving. Then you go to the Bears. I think they lose. I think they split with the Bears. Then they go to Denver. That's gonna be a tough game in Denver. I think that's a loss. Then you got Chicago again. I think Packers take that one. I think they split, like I said. Then you got a tough one, Packers versus Ravens. I think the Ravens got that one, and they finish off against Minnesota. I don't know if it'll matter or not, but I think the Packers will win. So they'll finish off with a 11-6 record. Now we go to the Vikings, which I don't know what to expect from JJ McCarthy this year. I don't think anyone does. So it's tough. It's a tough call here. It's a really tough call here. But we're going to go, because their first game against the Bears, I think they win that one. Then they play Atlanta at home. I don't expect much from Atlanta this year. But I think the Vikings beat Atlanta. Then they go to Cincy. Bengals, I don't see them losing to the Vikings. I think that's a loss for the Vikings. Then they play the Steelers. Steelers defense is good. I think the Steelers beat the Vikings here. Then they played the Browns. I think the Vikings beat the Browns. And the Eagles played the Vikings. I think that's a loss for the Vikings there. Then you got the Chargers. It's a tough team. But I think Minnesota loses that one. I think Chargers are a good team. And then you got Detroit, I think. Yeah, I think Detroit wins that one. Then Vikings, Ravens, Battle of the Purple. I think the Ravens win that one. And then Vikings and Bears. I think the Bears win this one. I think they split. Then you got Packers. I think the Packers win that one. Then you got Seattle. That's a tough call. I think Seattle has that one though. Then they got Washington. Jaden Daniels is insane. So I got the Commanders winning that one. Then you got Dallas. I think Dallas has that one there. And you got the Giants. I think that's a win for. I think it's a win for the Vikings. And then the Lions. I think Lions win that one. Then Green Bay, they finish. I don't think it'll matter or not, but I think Green Bay will beat the Vikings there. So 6-11. Not very good. But I will say if JJ McCarthy lights it up, I think they'll be 10-7. At least 10-7. If JJ McCarthy is like at least what Sam Darnold did last year. At least that. But I think at the top, at the most, I think they're 10-7. I don't think they go any way past that. But I really do think 6-11. Tough schedule here. But I also think it all relies on JJ McCarthy. They got a good defense. It's just they got good weapons. Just a quarterback. We gotta see it. Now we go to the Bears. Bears improved a lot this offseason. I mean, they could shock a lot of teams this year, but I don't see it. They get to Minnesota week 1. I think that's a loss. Detroit, I think that's a loss. Dallas, I think that's a loss. Rams, I think that's a loss. Commanders, I think that's a loss as well. Saints, I think that's a loss. Ravens, I think that's a loss. Bengals, I think that's a loss. They got a win against the Giants. A win against the Vikings. Pittsburgh, I think they beat them. Philly, I think that's a loss for the Bears. Packers beat the Bears. Cleveland, I think the Bears beat Cleveland. Packers, I think the Bears beat the Packers. I think they split. And then the 49ers, I think that's a loss for the Bears. And then they finish with Detroit. I don't think it will matter. But I think the Bears lose out. 3-15. Not so good for the Bears. Better expectations for them, but tough schedule, and they are the Bears after all. So now we're going to go to the NFC East with the Commanders, Eagles, Cowboys, and Giants. So there we go. So we're going to start off with the Eagles. So they start off week 1, first game of the season. They play Dallas. I think that's a win for the Eagles. And then they go to Kansas City week 2. Tough schedule here. Cowboys to the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs win this one. I see they got revenge on their mind. So I think Kansas City wins that one. Then the Eagles play the Rams. I think that's a loss. I'm expecting big things from the Rams this year, especially because of the addition of Devontae Adams, and man, the defense is going to get even better than it was last year. Then the Eagles go to Tampa. I think they beat Tampa. Denver, it's a tough one there. It is really tough, but I think the Eagles beat them. I think it'll be a close game though. Giants, I think the Eagles beat the Giants. Vikings, I think the Eagles beat the Vikings. Then they play the Giants again. I think that's a win for the Eagles. I think they sweep the Giants. But Packers, Eagles. I don't see the Packers beating the Eagles here. So I think that's a win for the Eagles. And Philly versus Detroit. I think the Eagles lose this one. I think the Lions have got Sunday Night Football. I think they're going to come out swinging. But then Eagles at Dallas. In Dallas, I think Dallas beats them. I think they're going to split Eagles and Cowboys. I think they'll split this year. So I think this is a win for Dallas. Then the Eagles play the Bears. I think the Eagles run through the Bears. Then the Chargers. It could be a pretty good game there. But I think the Eagles got that one. Raiders. I think the Raiders are going to shock a lot of people this year. So I think the Eagles are going to beat the Raiders, but look out for the Raiders this year, man. But then Washington. I think the Eagles lose to Washington. Then they got Buffalo. Tough one there. I think they lose to Buffalo. Then to Washington. Well, if it will matter or not, I don't know. But depending on how it finishes, I think the Eagles win this one. But I think it's got to depend on how it ends. But I really think, honestly, I think Washington beats them. I think Washington finishes. But yeah, so with that, I think the Eagles will be 11-6. 11-6 as their record. So now we're going to do Washington. They start off against the Giants. I think that's it. That's an easy dub for them. Then the Commanders go to Green Bay. Earlier in the year, I think the Commanders beat the Packers. Then the Commanders play the Raiders. I think Washington beats the Raiders. Then you got the Falcons. I think Washington beats them. I think it'll be a close game though. Chargers. I think Washington beats the Chargers. Chicago, little revenge game with a Hail Mary. I think Washington beats the Bears there. Then Dallas. I think they lose to Dallas at home. Dallas is at home. Then you got Kansas City. I think the Chiefs beat them. That's going to be a good game, though. Jalen Daniels versus Patrick Mahomes for the first time ever. That's going to be a crazy game there. And then the Commanders Washington's got the Seahawks. I think Washington beats them. Detroit, I think that's a loss for the Commanders. Then I got Miami. I think Miami loses that one. Denver, Washington versus Denver. That could be a great game there. But I think Washington beats Denver. Then the Vikings. I think Washington beats the Vikings. Washington and the Giants. I think Washington beats the Giants. Eagles. I think Washington beats the Eagles. Then Commanders play Dallas. I think Washington beats Dallas and Philly to end the year. I think Washington is going to do it this year. I think they're going to win the division this year, guys. I really think so. I really think it. So yeah, I think the Washington Commanders will be 13-4 this season. So now let's head to Dallas, the Dallas side of things. As we said, Dallas and Philly play week 1, first game of the year. I think Dallas loses this one. Then the Dallas plays the Giants. I think Dallas beats the Giants. Then Bears, Cowboys. I think Cowboys beat the Bears. I think they lose to Green Bay, beat the Jets, lose to Carolina, lose to Washington, lose to Denver. They beat the Cardinals. They beat the Raiders. I think they beat the Eagles. They split, as I said earlier. The Chiefs, I think the Chiefs beat the Cowboys. I don't see Patrick Mahomes losing on Thanksgiving. I don't see it. But I think the Lions beat the Cowboys. Cowboys beat the Vikings. Chargers, I think Cowboys beat the Chargers. Washington, I think Washington beats the Cowboys. Cowboys, Giants, I think that's a win for the Cowboys. So yeah, I think the Cowboys will be 8-9. So we'll play it by year. If they make the playoffs or not, I ain't doing all the math in that situations. But I think Cowboys will come close, but we'll see how them standings fall. But here's the Giants. Here we go. 2 quarterbacks and a rookie in that situation. So in Washington, I think that's a loss. Dallas, that's a loss. Chiefs, that's a loss. Chargers, that's a loss. Saints, I think that's a loss. Eagles, I think that's a loss. Denver, I think that's a loss. Eagles, I think that's a loss. Niners, I think that's a loss. Bears, I think that's a loss. Green Bay, I think that's a loss. Detroit, I think that's a loss. Patriots, I think that's a loss. Washington, I think it's a loss. Vikings, I think that's a win there. I'm sorry, I think that's a loss. Raiders, loss. Dallas, loss. I don't think I think they could win some games. I don't see a game they could win. So I think the Giants might not win any games this year. I think that additional Russ doesn't change a lot. I think Jackson Dart was just going to groom and learn from Jameis and Russ. But, yeah, man, I don't see them winning many games this year, if any, to be honest with you guys. But, yeah. So let's go to NFC South of things. And we're going to start off with my team, the Saints. And this is probably going to pay me a little bit because I don't think we're going to do very well this year. But Saints, they kick off things with the Cardinals. I think the Saints can beat the Cardinals. This quarterback situation, man, for the Saints, all depends on it. It all depends on it. Can one of these quarterbacks ball out this year? We'll see. But I think we could beat the Cardinals, then play the 49ers. I think we're in the same situation as the 49ers as far as age. I think they have the quarterback, though. But I think we can beat the 49ers. So 2-0. Seattle, I think Seattle beats us there. Buffalo at home in Buffalo. I don't think we could win that game in any way. So, but then we got the Giants. I think we beat the Giants. Patriots, I think we beat the Patriots. Bears, I think we beat the Bears. Bucks, I think we lose to the Bucks. But I think we'll split with the Bucks. So I think Tampa beats us there. Rams, I think it's a loss. Carolina, I think that's a loss. Falcons, I think that's a win there. Miami, I think that's a win. At home against Tampa, I think that's a win. I'm sorry, I think that's a loss, but I think the other one was a win against them. And then Carolina, I think that's a loss. I think that's a loss. I tell you, Carolina improved. I think they're way better. But I think the Panthers beat us there. Then we got the Jets. I think we beat the Jets. Titans. I think we lose to the Titans. I think Cam Ward is going to get a hang of things then. Then we finish with the Falcons. I think we beat the Falcons. And we finish with the 8-9 record. Not too good because we want to get the quarterback, but we'll see what the quarterback situation is. Honestly, I could see us going maybe lower if we're really going to just flat out stink this year. That's our plan. Then I see us having a lower record. But if the quarterbacks play well, I think it's at least 9-8, in my opinion. But let's go to Tampa. We're going to do the Bucks now. First game, we play the Falcons. That's a win for them. Houston, that's going to be a tough one, but I think Tampa could fight it out. I think they beat Houston. Then they've got the Jets. I think they beat the Jets. Eagles, I think that's a loss for Tampa. Then you got Seattle. I think that's a loss. Niners, I think the Bucks beat the Niners. Lions, I think that's a loss for Tampa. Saints, I think that's a loss at home in New Orleans. So then you got the Patriots. I think that's a loss. Buffalo, I think that's a loss. Rams, loss. Cardinals, I think they win that one. Saints again, I think they win that one. Falcons, I think they win that one. Carolina, I think that's a loss. I think that's a loss for Tampa. Miami, I think that's a win. Carolina, I think it's a win. So yeah. So let's go to Atlanta. So to Atlanta now. Well, Tampa will be a 9-8 record, so possibly a playoff team, depending on standings and all that. But yeah, now we're going to go to the Falcons. As I said earlier, I don't expect much from the Falcons this year. New quarterback, not sure what to expect from him. The defense has been iffy. Yes, they added the 2 pass rushers. We'll see how that works out. But the other sides of the defense has not been great. So, as we said earlier, they opened up against Tampa. I think it's a loss. Vikings, I think that's a loss. Panthers, I think that's a loss. Washington, I think it's a loss. Buffalo, I think it's a loss. I think they can beat the 49ers. I think they can beat Miami. Patriots, I think that's a loss. Colts, I think that's a loss. Carolina, I think that's a win. I think they split. Saints, I think that's a loss. Jets, I think that's a loss. Seahawks, I think that's a loss. Tampa, I think that's a loss. Cardinals, I think that's a loss. Rams, I think that's a loss. And Saints, I think that's a loss. So 3-14, not good at all. I don't expect much from them. So, and we're gonna go now to Carolina. The Panthers. They start off against Jacksonville. I think the Panthers beat the Jags, week 1. Then the Cardinals. I think the Panthers beat the Cardinals. Atlanta. I think Carolina beats Atlanta. Patriots. I think that's a win. Miami. I think that's a win. Dallas. I think that's a win. Jets. I think that's a win. Buffalo. I think that's a loss. Green Bay, I think that's a loss. New Orleans, I think that's a win for Carolina. Falcons, I think that's a loss again. 49ers, I think that's a loss. Rams, I think that's a loss. Saints, I think that's a loss. Tampa, I think that's a win. And Seattle, I think that's a win. And Tampa and Carolina finish out. So it's gonna be interesting, but I think Carolina wins at a 10-7 record. 10-7. Panthers win that division. That's the one that's like shocking. I think Bryce Young showed so many improvements last year, and they got that offense with T-Mac added. Man, I expect a lot from the Panthers. I think Panthers, look out for them. But now we go into the West side, NFC West here. We're going to start off with the Rams. And they open up the year. Houston, I think it's a loss. Tennessee, I think they beat them. Philly, they beat Philly. Colts, they beat the Colts. They lose to 49ers. I think they split. Baltimore, I think the Rams beat the Ravens. Jaguars, I think Rams beat the Jags. Saints, Rams beat the Saints. 49ers, that's a win. They split, like I said. Seattle, they beat Seattle. Tampa, they beat the Bucks. They beat Carolina. They beat Arizona. They beat Detroit. They lose to Seattle, beat the Falcons, and beat the Cardinals to finish out the year at 13-4. I'm telling you guys, look out for the Rams. Sorry, Rams. I'm telling you, they're gonna be a good team. Now we're gonna go to Seattle. Not sure what to expect from Sam Darnold. Was it a one-off, or is it the truth? Or was it a fluke? We'll see. They start off the year, 49ers. I think they beat the 49ers. I think they beat Pittsburgh. Beat the Saints. Lose to the Cardinals. Lose to Tampa. Lose to Jacksonville. Lose to Houston. Lose to Washington. Beat the Cardinals. Lose to the Rams. Beat the Titans. Lose to the Vikings. Uh, beat the Falcons, beat the Colts, beat the Rams, lose the 49 or the Panthers, and then they beat the 49ers to finish out the year. So that's 8-9 record. Yeah, not a whole lot there. Then 49ers, Seahawks, I think that's a loss. Saints, I think that's a loss. Cardinals, I think they beat the Cardinals. I think they split. Jacksonville, I think it's a loss. Rams, I think they beat the Rams. They split. Tampa, I think that's a loss. Falcons, I think they beat them. Houston, I think that's a loss. Giants, I think that's a win. Rams, I think that's a loss. They split, like I said. Cardinals, I think that's a loss. Panthers, I think that's a loss. Browns, I think that's a win for the 49ers. Titans, I think that's a loss. Colts, I think that's a loss. Bears, I think that's a loss. Seahawks, I think that's a loss. 6-12. I think that the team's gotten older. Won't know what to expect from CMC. But yeah, we'll see. Cardinals, Saints, they open up. I think that's a loss. Panthers, I think that's a loss. 49ers, I think that's a loss. Seahawks, I think that's a win. Titans, I think that's a win. Colts, I think that's a loss. Packers, I think that's a loss. Dallas, I think that's a loss. Seattle, I think that's a win. 49ers again, I think that's a win. Jacksonville, I think it's a loss. Tampa, I think that's a loss. Rams, I think that's a loss. Houston, I think that's a loss. Atlanta, I think that's a win. Cincinnati, I think that's a loss. And Rams, I think that's a loss. At 5-12. Yeah, I don't think Cardinals are going to do that hot this year. All right. Now, I think we all did all the NFC sided teams. Now we're going to do the AFC side. We're going to start with the AFC West. We're going to start off with the Chiefs. They played the Chargers in Brazil. It didn't affect much last game between Eagles and Packers. It wasn't affecting much. They scored a lot of points. Defense maybe. But I think the Chiefs beat the Chargers. Beat the Eagles. Beat the Giants. Beat Baltimore. Beat Jacksonville. Beat Detroit. Lose to the Raiders. Beat Washington. Lose to Buffalo. Lose to Denver. Beat the Colts. Beat Houston. Lose to the Chargers. Beat the Titans. Beat the Broncos. Beat the Raiders. I forgot the game. Cowboys. I think they lose. Or I think they beat the Cowboys. There's no way Patrick Mahomes loses on Thanksgiving. But I have them finishing out at 12-5. I think that's pretty good there. Now we're gonna go to the Chargers, and they first game again in Brazil. Played Kansas City. I think it's a loss. Raiders. I think they beat the Raiders. Broncos. I think they beat the Broncos, but I think they'll split. Giants. I think it's a win for the Chargers. Washington. That's a loss. Miami. That's a win. Colts. That's a win. Minnesota. I think that's a win for the Vikings. Titans. I think that's a win. Pittsburgh. I think that's a loss. I think their defense is really stacked. Jacksonville. I think that's a loss. Raiders. I think that's a loss. Eagles. I think that's a loss. Chiefs. I think that's a loss. I think they can beat Dallas. Houston, that's a loss. And Denver, that's a loss. They finish at 7-10. Not as good as I thought. Maybe they could probably beat 8-9 at best. But I don't see much from them. So now, go to Denver. They start off with the Titans. Titans got the rookie. I don't see much from him. From Cam Ward starting off week 1 and just showing off. But I think Broncos win, beat Titans. Colts, that's a win. Chargers, that's a loss, but I think they split. Bengals, I think the Bengals got that one. Eagles, that's a loss for Denver. Jets, I think they beat the Jets, beat the Giants, beat Dallas, beat Houston. That'll be a tough one, but I think they beat Houston. Beat the Raiders, lose to the Chiefs, lose to Washington, lose to the Raiders, beat Green Bay. Beat Green Bay. Beat Jacksonville, beat the Chiefs, and beat the Chargers. So they were going to be 12-5. So right neck and neck with the Chiefs. I like the Broncos. I really do like the Broncos this year. Got that defense really good there. Got a new addition in corner. Now we're going to do the Raiders. They play the Patriots. I think Raiders beat the Patriots. Raiders beat the Chargers. I'm sorry. Let me restart. Patriots beat the Raiders. I think it's a loss for the Raiders. Chargers, I think that's a loss. Washington, I think that's a loss. Bears, I think that's a win. Colts, I think that's a win. Titans, I think that's a win. Chiefs, I think that's a win. Jacksonville, I think it's a loss. Denver, I think that's a loss. Dallas, I think that's a loss. Cleveland, I think that's a win. Chargers, I think that's a win. Denver, I think that's a win. I think they'll split. Eagles, I think that's a loss. Houston, I think that's a loss. Giants, I think that's a win. And Kansas City, I think that's a win. I think it's a loss for the Chiefs. So yeah, they'll be 8-9. It's gonna come down to that last game against the Chiefs. I think for the Raiders, better record than I think a lot of people thought. But Brock Bowers, Ashton Jeanty, Geno Smith, a little bit better quarterback than they had in the past. I think that's pretty good there for them. AFC South. Let's start off with Tennessee. Titans, they kick off with the Broncos. I think that's a loss. Rams, I think that's a loss. Colts, I think that's a loss. Houston, I think that's a loss. Arizona, I think they beat Arizona. Raiders, I think that's a loss. Patriots, I think that's a loss. Colts, I think that's a win. Chargers, I think that's a loss. Houston, I think that's a win for Tennessee. Seahawks, I think the Titans beat the Seahawks. Jags, I think that's a loss. Browns, I think that's a win. Niners, I think that's a win. Chiefs, I think that's a loss. Saints, I think that's a win. Jacksonville, I think it's a loss. 7-10, I got the Titans. Now we're going to go to the Colts. They kick off against Miami. I think that's a loss. Denver, I think that's a loss. Titans, I think that's a win for the Colts. Rams, I think that's a loss. Raiders, I think that's a win. I think that's a loss for the Raiders. Cardinals, I think that's a win. Chargers, I think that's a loss. Titans, I think that's a loss. Pittsburgh, I think that's a loss. Atlanta, I think that's a win. Chiefs, I think that's a loss. Texans, I think that's a loss. Jags, I think that's a loss. Seahawks, I think that's a loss. Niners, I think that's a win. I think they lose Jacksonville and lose to the Texans. So they will be, 4-12. That doesn't make sense. 4-13. Not bad. Now we're going to the Texans here. First game we got Rams. I think they beat the Rams. It'll be a close game though. Tampa, I think it's a loss. Jags, I think that's a loss. Titans, I think that's a win. Baltimore, I think it's a loss. Seahawks, I think that's a win. Niners, I think that's a win. Broncos, I think that's a loss. Jags, I think that's a win. Titans, I think that's a loss. Buffalo, I think that's a loss. Colts, I think that's a win. Chiefs, I think that's a loss. Cardinals, I think it's a win. Raiders, win. Chargers, that's a win. And Colts, that's a win. 10-7, Houston. I feel like that's fair. But Jacksonville, kick off the year with Carolina, I think it's a loss. Bengals, I think it's a win for Jacksonville. Beat Houston, beat the Niners, lose to the Chiefs, lose to Seattle, lose to the Rams, beat the Raiders, lose to the Texans, Chargers win, Jacksonville beats the Chargers, Cardinals, that's a win for the Jacksonville, Titans, that's a win, Colts, that's a win, Jets, that's a win, Denver, that's a loss, Colts, that's a win, Titans, that's a win. So I have the Jags winning the division at 11-6. I think they win the division and beat Houston. So yeah. Now it's the AFC East here. So yeah, we're gonna kick things off with Buffalo. Baltimore, I think they beat Baltimore. Sunday Night Football. Week 1 to start off. I think Buffalo beats Baltimore. Jets, that's a win. Miami, that's a win. Saints, that's a win. I think they lose to the Patriots. Falcons, I think that's a win. Carolina, I think that's a win. Chiefs, I think that's a win. Miami, I think that's a win. Tampa, I think that's a win. Houston, I think that's a win. Steelers, I think that's a win. Bengals, I think that's a loss. Patriots, I think that's a win. Browns, I think that's a win. Eagles, I think that's a win. Jets, I don't think that game will matter for them, but I think that's a loss for the Bills. 13-4, I had the Bills. I think that they're the top ones in the AFC. So yeah, look out for them. Now we're going to go to Miami with the Dolphins. They kick off with the Colts. I think that's a win for Miami. Patriots, I think that's a win, but I think they'll split. And Buffalo, I think that's a loss. Jets, I think that's a win. Carolina, I think that's a loss. Chargers, I think that's a loss. Browns, I think that's a win. Falcons, I think that's a win. Baltimore, I think that's a loss. Buffalo, I think that's a loss. Commanders, I think that's a loss. Saints, I think that's a loss. Jets, I think that's a win for the Jets at home. Steelers, I think that's a win. Bengals, I think that's a loss. Tampa, I think that's a loss. And Patriots, I think that's a loss. 6-11, I have Miami. And now the Jets. Got Pittsburgh. I think the Jets beat Pittsburgh depending on the Aaron Rodgers stuff. But I think the Jets beat Pittsburgh. You know he wants some revenge, Mr. Justin Fields. Then you got Buffalo. I think that's a loss. Tampa, I think that's a loss. Miami, I think that's a win. Dallas, I think that's a win. Denver, I think that's a loss. Rams, I think that's a loss. Bengals, I think that's a loss. Browns, I think that's a win. Patriots, I think that's a loss. Ravens, I think that's a loss. Falcons, I think that's a win. Miami, I think that's a win. Jacksonville, I think that's a loss. Saints, I think that's a loss. Patriots, I think that's a win. Bills, I think that's a win. 8 and 9. Because also, I think the last game doesn't really matter for Buffalo. So, yeah. So, I'm going to finish with Patriots in its division. Patriots, Raiders, I think the Patriots win that one. Miami, I think they beat Miami. I'm sorry, Miami beats the Patriots. They lose to the Steelers, lose to the Panthers, beat the Bills, beat the Saints, beat the Titans, beat the Browns, beat the Falcons, lose to Tampa, beat the Jets, lose to the Bengals, beat the Giants, lose to Buffalo, beat Baltimore. I'm sorry, lose to Baltimore. Jets, that's a loss. And Miami, that's a win. So I have the Patriots at 11-6 here. So yeah, I think the Patriots could turn things around this year. They did good in the draft and in the offseason. I think they did enough. And Mike Vrabel as the coach, I think they'll do just fine. All right, AFC North now. We're going to kick it off with the Browns. We're going to start with the Browns here. Not expecting much from them. Bengals, I think they win. The Bengals don't start good, whatever it is, in their first game. Baltimore, I think they beat Baltimore. Lose to Green Bay. Lose to Detroit. Lose to the Vikings. Lose to the Pittsburgh. Actually, I think they beat Pittsburgh. Dolphins, I think that's a loss. Patriots, I think that's a loss. Jets, I think that's a loss. Baltimore, I think that's a loss. Raiders, I think that's a loss. 49ers, I think that's a loss. Titans, I think that's a loss. Bears, I think that's a loss. Bills, I think that's a loss. Steelers, I think that's a loss. Bengals, I think that's a loss. 3-14. I don't know what the quarterback situation is going to be, but I think it will be 3-14 either way. Yeah. We're going to go to Pittsburgh now. Steelers. Start off with the Jets. I think that's a loss. Depending on Rodgers, though. Like Steelers record, all depends on Rodgers. This is without Rodgers right now. I think there's a loss to Seattle. Lose to the Patriots. Beat the Vikings. Beat the Browns. Lose to the Bengals. Lose to Green Bay. Beat the Colts. Lose to the Chargers. Beat the Bengals. They split. Bears, I think they beat the Bears. Buffalo, I think that's a loss. Baltimore, I think Steelers beat Baltimore. Miami, I think that's a loss. Detroit, I think that's a loss. Browns, I think it's a win. Ravens, I think that's a win. So 9-8, I have them finishing. Probably going to be the last seed. But we'll see. Now we're going to do the Ravens as they kick off things with Buffalo. I think that's a loss there. Lose to the Browns. Lose to the Lions. Lose to the Chiefs. So they're 0-4 to start off. But they beat the Texans, though. Lose to the Rams. Beat the Bears. Beat the Dolphins. Beat the Vikings. Beat the Browns. Beat the Jets. Beat the Bengals. Lose to the Steelers. Bengals beat the Ravens. Patriots, that's a win. Packers, that's a loss. And Steelers, that's a loss. So yeah. Actually, I'm sorry, that's a win for the Ravens. So I think the Ravens finish out 10-7. Not as good as a lot of people think, but I think that's what it's going to be. Now you got the Bengals. Start off Cleveland. I think that's a loss just because Bengals don't ever start well. Bengals, Jags. I think it's a loss. Vikings, I think that's a win. Denver, I think that's a loss. Detroit, I think that's a loss. Green Bay, I think that's a win. Pittsburgh, I think that's a win. Jets, I think that's a win. Bears, I think that's a win. Pittsburgh again, I think that's a loss. Patriots, I think that's a win. Baltimore, I think that's a loss. Buffalo, I think that's a win. Baltimore, I think that's a win. Miami, I think that's a win. Cardinals, I think that's a win. And Browns, I think it's a win. 11-6, I have the Bengals. So I have them winning the division. So that is all the teams. So now we're going to explain. We're going to go over all the teams. Just once more. Detroit 12-5. Green Bay 11-6. Vikings 6-11. Bears 3-15. Commanders 13-4. Cowboys 8-9. Eagles 10-7. Giants, I don't think they're gonna win any games. It's cruel, but I don't see any way they win any of them games. Tampa 9-8. Carolina 10-7. Atlanta 3-14. Saints 8-9. As much as it pains me to say, but Rams, I think they're 3-14. Seattle, I think they're 8-9. 5-12. 49ers. Cardinals also 5-12. Chiefs 12-5. Denver 12-5. So it's going to come down to the last game in that one. Chargers 7-10. Raiders 8-9. Texans 10-7. Jacksonville 11-6. Titans 7-10. And Colts 4-12. But now Buffalo, I think they're 13-4. Patriots 11-6. Miami 6-11. Jets 8-9. So that's all. Oh, I'm sorry. Baltimore 10-7. Bengals 11-6. Steelers 9-8. And Browns 3-14. So yeah, that's all the predictions I have. Let me know what you guys think. In another video, I'm going to be predicting playoff seeding. Another video, upcoming video. So make sure you guys check that out. Yeah, those are my predictions. Let me know what you guys think. Who's going to have a better record? Do you think my record predictions were bad, cruel, or do you think they were good? So yeah. So that's it for today's video. God bless y'all. And remember, stay on business, y'all.